Every NFL draft has its winners and its losers. These are the biggest fat losers of the 2024 NFL draft. The teams that just simply made no sense. They didn't address their needs. They didn't seem to have an adequate plan, at least in my opinion. And the teams that really failed to find value. Of course, we don't know how good these players are going to be, but this is an exercise for me to examine your favorite team's draft and really give you a take. Do I love what they did? Did I absolutely despise what they did? This is the first part of examining the NFL draft. The teams that I thought just missed a big fat opportunity to improve. These teams did not take that opportunity. Gronk, spike the like button. Don't forget to subscribe for more NFL content just like this, all offseason long. Get in the comment section and let me know your opinion. Do you agree with my take or do you disagree? Are these losers really winners? And explain why you disagree with my take in the comment section below. Always open to conversation because, like I said, we don't actually know how good these players are going to be, but we do know if a team actually had a plan and if a team addressed their needs. So let's begin in alphabetical order once again with the perhaps biggest loser of the 2024 NFL draft. And that, I think, for a lot of people is going to be the Atlanta Falcons. The Atlanta Falcons are absolutely big, fat losers. Loser! The Atlanta Falcons just had one of the strangest drafts for a team that is all in, like Jerry Jones proclaims the Cowboys are. The Falcons are on one side of their mouse, proclaiming that they are going to be a win now team and they plan on winning now and they think they will win now. This is coming out of the mouths of the head coach, Raheem Morris, and the general manager, and they're talking about how they're going to be a playoff team and they're never going to be picking in the top 10, so it doesn't matter that they pick a quarterback and all this mumbo jumbo. But you know what helps you win? A draft that you absolutely nail. You know how you don't win? You don't use your draft to actually help you improve. You just use it for players for the future at positions that you're already decent at. Like, I don't know, the quarterback position that you just spent, I don't know, how many $180 million on? Kirk Cousins is supposed to be your guy. And I hate this for Kirk Cousins because I want to see Kirk Cousins break the narratives. I want to see Kirk Cousins do something with his career in the playoffs. I want to see him bounce back from this Achilles tear and prove everybody wrong and have a deep run with the Atlanta Falcons. I want the Falcons to win, and I am taking this from the fan standpoint. If I was a Falcons fan, I would be absolutely irate and disgusted by my team's plan. This is like if the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the first round of their draft, when they signed Tom Brady, right? Because many people thought Brady was semi-washed or not the same or not elite. So let's just say a lot of people thought that Brady was like Cousins is, right? So let's just say that they picked a quarterback instead of Tristan Wirfs in the first round. Did they win the Super Bowl that year? Very unlikely. What type of vibe does that set? That does not work for me. There's so many reasons that this pick was absolutely outrageously awful. From the fact that, first of all, just throw the evaluation of Michael Penix out, who I had as the 5th best quarterback in this class. He ends up going 4th, and he ends up going way higher than I would have picked him personally. So that's certainly part of it. But the second part of it, guys, is the fact that he is not going to play for at least 3 years because Kirk Cousins is signed guaranteed for 2 seasons. There's no plan. You're like, oh, the Jordan Love plan. Jordan Love was 21. Jordan Love was already getting picked to a team that established playoff success and had Aaron Rodgers at the time. And Aaron Rodgers, who was not on a fresh new mintly signed contract, and Aaron Rodgers that was not playing that well, and in Aaron Rodgers that actually fueled him to play MVP football. That's fantastic, but that was after Jordan Love was picked. Aaron Rodgers was playing the worst football of his career before Jordan Love was picked, and it was in the 20s, not 8th overall, where you could have picked the best defensive player in the draft, an edge rusher. You haven't had an edge rusher since, I don't know, Vic Beasley in 2016 for one little stint, and then also John Abraham in like 2008. You haven't had an edge rusher since Michael Vick played, bro. Like, come on. And then you're talking like you're going to win the Super Bowl this year when you pick a quarterback at 8th overall. Are you kidding me? Like, he is 24 years old, tons of starts in college football. This is not a guy that needs to sit on the bench. He's injured, like, had a ton of injury history. Like, what a jabroni move by the Atlanta Falcons. Absolutely pathetic. I could spend 15 minutes on this alone, and I did on Bleacher Report. I did a whole thing on it. So I'm going to continue with their draft, which continued to get bad when they picked Scooby-Doo in the second round, Rook Arororo, Scooby-Doo, in the second round, a raw defensive tackle prospect who, yes, has potential, but is going to be sitting behind Grady Jarrett and David Onyemata. Like, how much is this kid going to play right away? You're trying to do something right now. How are you supposed to win? Why do you sign Kirk Cousins and then pick a draft for 2027? Somebody make it make sense. And then you got Braylon Trice out of Washington, who's a below-average athlete, but is productive. This pick actually was in line with the Kirk Cousins signing. Then you picked, I actually like the kid out of Oregon at D-tackle, but you picked 2 D-tackles in your top 4 picks, and you have D-tackles. What? I don't understand it. Then you continue with linebacker, whatever, running back. You've got running backs. Why are you picked? Somebody please explain why the Atlanta Falcons would pick a fucking running back. Excuse my language. Then they pick a wide receiver and just to top it all off, another defensive tackle. Are you kidding me? I did not expect to swear in this video. I apologize to the kiddies. Oh my goodness, the Falcons are jabronis. Let's get to the next one. A team that I can be a little bit more calm about because honestly, they didn't have a lot of picks to work with. But this is partly why they're losers. The Cleveland Browns. They're sitting here paying Deshaun Watson, giving all their draft capital for Deshaun Watson, and the guy absolutely sucks. He sucks. And then, okay, I love Michael Hall. Love the pick. Thought you got good value with the pick. Think he's one of the highest, ceiling picks that you could have went for at the defensive tackle position. So I like that. And your defensive tackles are aging. So I totally understand that pick. But here's my problem, right? The Browns are stacked. So part of the problem is, how do you find players that are actually going to help you right now? That's part of the problem. But you're looking at a draft here. Michael Hall, who's going to be your 4th defensive tackle in 2024. Zach Zinter, who's going to be at best your 2nd string guard, right? Your 2nd, 3rd guard on the depth chart at best. Thrash out of Louisville. Maybe there's some upside with that pick, a wide receiver, but you picked a receiver in the draft last year. You did just sign Jerry Jeudy. You have Elijah Moore and you have Amari Cooper. So he's like your 5th receiver, right? So you're looking at this draft and I just wish they would have addressed different positions. I think that's how I feel. It just felt like this draft will have no contribution to the team in 2024, which is why I would say they're a loser, on top of having to give draft capital for a quarterback that absolutely sucks. All right, the Denver Broncos. Yes, they're losers. I like some of their draft. This one was a little bit back and forth for me because I love the Jonah Ellis pick out of Utah. Utah? What's an Utah, Mitch? Utah, okay? 3rd round pick, like his pass rushing pedigree. Think that he's really good just with the bag of tricks that he offers as a pass rusher, like his speed ability. Think he fits in terms of a size, speed, skill set in that defense for the man that's having the time of his life in Denver. Troy Franklin in the 4th round, not bad. I'm not a Troy Franklin guy, but getting him in the 4th round, beautiful, right? Here's the thing, though. Like, I guess you're replacing Jerry Jeudy, but didn't you just spend like a relatively high capital pick on Marvin Mims? I don't know, though. They're just throwing picks here at wide receiver, and I just don't really know how that's all going to shape out, but it is what it is. I don't hate that pick whatsoever. They get a corner out of Missouri, who I honestly don't know much about. Then they get a running back, Estime out of Notre Dame, who's a power back, high floor pick. He's probably going to be a backup in the NFL. Don't really get this pick for this team, right? Like, they signed a running back in free agency last year. They have Javonte Williams. You don't need a running back. As a Denver Broncos team that needs premier positions, quarterback, wide receiver, offensive line, like youth, defensive line, pass rush, corner, just spend all your picks on those positions, not a running back. They get another receiver out of Utah. I don't know if that kid's even going to make the team. And then they get a center in the last round, which they should have spent a center a lot earlier because they don't really have one currently. I like that they went edge rusher, but ultimately at the end of the day, I could go through this whole list and I could like some of the picks like Jonah Ellis and Troy Franklin's value, but at the end of the day, it all comes down to picking Bo Nix 12th overall. A quarterback that is an older prospect who typically these older prospects do not shine in the NFL because they're smarter than everyone else in terms of football IQ when they play college football. They are bigger, stronger, faster than everybody else when playing college football. Bo Nix played at Auburn, he played at Oregon, he played forever. He was super productive at Oregon, but he was a guy that threw the ball underneath. To me, he doesn't have any super capabilities physically. It felt like a forced pick because they had a need at quarterback. I would have honestly preferred them come away with multiple contributors at different positions that I felt good about in the first and second rounds or the first and third rounds. I would have rather them have traded back from this pick, got a second round pick out of it, had a first and second round pick to help the roster out, then use Zach Wilson this year and Jared Stidham this year, and then just pick your quarterback next year, which is what's going to end up happening. That's my ultimate issue with this draft. Bo Nix was a sacrificial lamb. I don't think he's going to be anything in the NFL besides a high-end backup, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm totally wrong. And this is where my assessment comes in, right? And this is where I say this is a matter of opinion. If you think Bo Nix is going to be a franchise quarterback, you'll look at this draft differently. You'll say, well, they got Bo Nix. That's awesome. Although he was the 6th quarterback drafted in the first round. Typically, that doesn't work out, right? History will tell us that. Well, and then they got a pass rusher that I like, and then they got a receiver I like. People will look at this differently, right? And Denver is definitely a circumstantial one. But for me, Bo Nix, he's just going to be a guy that goes out there. They win 4 games this year. They're in the top 3. They're going to pick a quarterback next year. That's exactly what's going to happen with the Denver Broncos. And this pick just ends up being nothing. That's exactly what I foresee for the Denver Broncos. I apologize to Broncos fans, but Sean Payton has become a guy that I just don't really like anymore. Like, every turn that has happened since he retired from the Saints and gone to Denver, every turn, every moment has been negative in my mind. Like, every move he's made, every press conference he's had has just come out arrogant and just not exactly calculated. And to me, this is just just too like short-sighted in my opinion. So, because they're going to get a quarterback in next year's draft. The Houston Texans are a loser to me. The Houston Texans, I can't say that they win everything, right? Like, I might say that they're going to go on to win the Super Bowl this year. That might actually happen. But their team did not really improve much in the draft. And you know I love the Texans, the way that they've built this team. I think their roster is stacked. I think Nick Caserio is a great GM. Love him from the New England days, all that stuff. I didn't really love this draft for them. I wouldn't say it was awful, but Lassiter is not one of my favorite picks in the second round. I think that he's a little slow, personally, to play on the perimeter. He ran a 4.6 in the 40. I don't think you're really playing man coverage on any elite receiver with a 4.6 40. So that limits his game. I think he's going to have to move inside at the NFL level. Maybe at best he becomes a Lenore type from the 49ers that DeMeco Ryans coached, and he can play outside and inside and primarily inside for this team. And maybe that's what he becomes with his high IQ and good zone coverage and good press skills. but I just don't see a lot of upside in that pick. Blake Fisher is going to be a backup, at least to begin with. Solid depth pickup in the draft, but honestly, maybe a future starter, but nothing that's really going to contribute right away. Don't mind that pick. I like that pick more than Lassiter, to be fair. Bullock out of USC is a very, wishy-washy selection. I think he could fit a role of a deep free safety type, but ultimately I don't really feel like he was the ideal pick. I don't mind the pick, but I don't hate it. Cade Stover, I believe, was one of the favorites of CJ Stroud, so I understand the pick, but they just signed Dalton Schultz, so I don't really know what his role is going to be. They picked another linebacker for depth, another running back for depth, and then, the rest of the draft. To me, they just didn't really come away with anyone that's going to contribute right away. And this is a team that's trying to win right now. I would have rather them been super aggressive and traded both their seconds to get into the first round and get a guy that could really help them right now, like a corner or potentially a safety, or potentially anything, really, like a D tackle. It just felt like they got bypassed and they just really didn't pick up players that I felt could help them in 2024, which I think they're trying to win this year. So that's why I say the Texans are losers. Not the biggest loser, but I think definitely losers. The Los Angeles Rams are up next. The Rams are losers to me. I am just disappointed in their draft. I feel like Jared Verse was a fine first-round pick, not sexy. I don't think he's ever going to be a phenomenal player, but I think he'll be a solid starter in the NFL at the edge position. Don't ever think he's going to be a 12-sack artist type of guy, but I think he'll be solid. So that's kind of like the tone of this draft. When we go through these picks, it just feels like the Rams very much went for a lot of floor picks and or guys that are not really going to be huge upside players. So Braden Fisk might be an upside player with his explosion off the ball and his quick hands, but I felt like he was a super flawed run defender. Obviously, the Rams kind of know how to utilize these undersized D tackles, so I'm intrigued by the pick. But ultimately, I wasn't very high on the player personally, and I also felt like there were bigger positions of need. Despite Aaron Donald retiring, I didn't think interior defensive line was forefront on my mind of the Rams' needs. But then they pick Blake Corum, who to me is going to be a backup running back in the third round. Not my favorite pick, although I like Corum. He's a backup running back. Then Cameron Kitchens out of Miami. Maybe he has some upside. Some people like him, possibly more than I did. Brennan Jackson, Tyler Davis, right? You look at this draft and they pick a kicker in the 6th round. They get multiple front 7 contributors as depth. Another receiver that they don't really need. I do like the Arkansas center in the 6th round. I don't mind that selection. They definitely needed offensive line depth. And then they finish it off with a guard in the final round, which, again, offensive line depth. So there's aspects that I don't hate. It just felt like, to me, the reason they're a loser is it just wasn't a sexy draft in any way, shape, or form. And they didn't really come away with, massive hits, to me, at least. That's the way I see it. So it was just a little underwhelming. They weren't exactly losers, but this was just a very underwhelming draft for the Rams. I didn't love the Fisk pick early in the 2nd round. I didn't love the Corum pick. So it's mostly to do with their day 2 selections more than anything. And Jared Verse to me was just fine. Nothing special. So that's my Rams stance. The Miami Dolphins just didn't really make a lot of sense. I didn't really understand their draft. Chop Robinson, raw edge player that's not really going to be able to contribute right away, in my opinion, at a position that they're drafting because they have 2 guys that are recovering from ACLs. And they signed Chubb, so he's there long term. Jalen Phillips is a stud when he plays, but he's also recovering from an ACL. They did sign, I believe, Shaq Barrett to help them overcome that. And then they spend another edge pick in the 5th round on Kamara, a guy that I think is pretty interesting, very undersized, but has a pretty good pass rushing skill set. I just don't know why they spent 2 of their top 4 picks on edge rushers when that's one of the strongest positions on their team, despite the injuries that they have right now. I just feel like that's very short-sighted of them. Once they actually get these guys in the building and they look at their depth chart, they're just going to be like, well, like we have like Kamara is going to be like our 6th edge rusher. Like, is he ever really going to play? At least for this year, maybe for the future, but I don't know. Patrick Paul, I'm just not a huge fan of overall. He started a ton of games. Maybe he can come in and play if somebody gets injured, but he doesn't feel like an immediate contributor for Miami. I think he's only strictly a tackle. And to me, I just saw too many technical flaws that are going to be hard to overcome at the NFL level. Didn't love the way that he was able to bend. Didn't love his ability to anchor in pass protection. And then Jalen Wright is a 3rd string running back, at least to begin with. Again, another pick that doesn't really help you right away. And Jalen Wright maybe can be their backup running back in a year or two, or at least be a change of pace or a 1A, 1B situation with A-Shane. But I felt like they made a really nice pick in A-Shane last year, who I wasn't really a huge fan of. And I'm not a Jalen Wright hater by any means. I think he definitely has some speed and is definitely a good fit in the offense. I just felt like overall, he's like the 3rd running back on the team right now for a team that, needed other positions. So that's just my take on it with the Miami Dolphins. I did love the Malik Washington pick, though. I think he might be able to be their 3rd receiver right away on this team, if not a 4th receiver, but he's going to be a good slot receiver, breaks a ton of tackles, runs good routes. Love that fit for him. I think he could maybe replace Braxton Berrios in that mix at the wide receiver position for them. But yeah, I just look at their draft and it was just a little confusing. I don't know why they prioritize edge the way they did instead of defensive line, interior defensive line. I don't know why they spent picks on running back and receiver instead of spending picks on the interior offensive line. It just feels like they avoided the offensive line, other than Patrick Paul is a guy who I don't really like overall. And I just don't get it. So Miami was just confusing. Then the New Orleans Saints, a draft that just underwhelming in terms of getting Fuaga with their first pick, a guy that I really like. I think he's going to be a really good offensive lineman, but my problem is that I think he's going to be a better guard than a tackle. And Trevor Penning is the reason that I think Fuaga is getting picked here. And maybe he plays right tackle long term. That could be a possibility for him, as that's what he played in college. But I think that they maybe missed out on a proper left tackle in the first round. But Fuaga's a beast, so I'm not really going to hate on that one. Kool-Aid, I didn't think that was their biggest need. Cornerback, nickelback, whatever he's going to be in the NFL, I didn't feel that was their biggest need overall. They've spent a ton of draft capital on that position. I don't know what the future holds there. Maybe they feel like he's a safety. If that's the case, then maybe this pick makes a little bit more sense. Spencer Rattler, to me, is just a waste of a pick for them. Like, I think he's their backup quarterback for the next 2 years, and then after that, I don't know. I think Rattler is going to be a solid backup in the NFL. I think he has some upside to his game with his arm strength. He's got a little bit of gamer to him. I see a little bit of Gardner Minshew-ness to him. So I don't hate it necessarily, but I also feel like, and in the 5th round, I'm not going to hate it. But at the end of the day, like, I don't know. Do they need a backup quarterback? Like, whatever. Jalen Ford at linebacker was a fine pick. But again, like, I just came away from this draft like corner, offensive tackle that maybe is a guard, and a quarterback as your first 3 picks. I just don't know how much that really improves the Saints overall. I was just looking for more. I guess they didn't really have a lot of picks in the top end of the draft, so it was a little bit disappointing from that standpoint. But I don't know. I feel like they're a loser because they didn't come away really, truly just upgrading this team to the level that they maybe needed to. So that's where I stand with the Saints. The New York Jets are next. The New York Jets are a loser to me because this is a team that's in win now mode, and they really made no picks that helped them right away. You look at their first 3 picks, Fashanu out of Penn State. He's a tackle, left tackle. That's probably going to be their 3rd tackle to begin with. And then after that, okay, maybe he's their future left tackle, but it's not until year 2 of his career. So yeah, I think that he helps them in terms of Tyron Smith injury, Morgan Moses' age. Maybe he gets injured. I get that, but he's not going to be in your starting lineup. So that's your 1st round pick. He's going to be a really good player, though, I think. So long-term, good pick. Short-term, not great. And they're going for short-term because they're trying to win, right? Malachi Corley, third receiver at best for this team. Think he's a very limited player in terms of he's a yards after catch guy. He's a screen guy. Don't really see him as a great route runner or a separator in the NFL. So I think there's a ceiling on that pick, honestly. Braylon Allen is a third string running back, second string at best. He does bring some power to Breece Hall's speed, but how much is he going to play? So that's their fourth round pick. Jordan Travis is never going to play as their third string quarterback, might not even make the team. And then after that, they pick another running back. He's not even going to make the team. So I look at this draft and I'm just like, okay, this is just useless. Like John Franklin Myers gets traded. That's also an L. Like, I guess that's a W for Denver. That helps them win. But Denver's a team that doesn't really need to try to win right now. Like their team is in terrible condition. So they trade for John Franklin Myers. That's kind of a W for them, but also kind of an L because like, why? And then the Jets also are trading a good player that's very versatile, that helps their defensive line all over the place, and they lose him, and they don't really get anything in return. It's not like they drafted a defensive lineman here, so I don't know. It's just whatever. And then the final team that I felt was a loser for this draft, the Tennessee Titans. The Tennessee Titans, I think, were just a matter of circumstance in the first round. They end up with J.C. Latham when I think they wanted Joe Alt. So that's just kind of missing out on the guy that they really wanted, in my opinion. And they end up with more of a right tackle than a left tackle, and a guy with, I think, a lot more risk. Just inherently, because he comes from Alabama and played the tackle position, and those guys haven't exactly worked out as of late. Good power player, though. Great length. I think he does have a lot of upside, so we'll see if we're able to work with him with a really good offensive line coach there in Tennessee. So could potentially be a really good pick. Might even be the best tackle in this class, but also he could be a bust more so than the players that went around him. Like Roma Dunze, Malik Neighbors, of course, Drake May, Joe Alt. The guys that went ahead of him, I just feel like, and around him, I should say, are players that, other than Michael Penix, have higher floors. So that's kind of what screams at me with that seventh pick. Then T'Vondre Sweat, I just think off the field concerns. They've had many of those type of picks in recent years that have not panned out, like Isaiah Wilson and Caleb Farley. And Sweat is another one of those. Freakish looking dude at huge frame, huge size, plays with power, but not much of a pass rusher, so doesn't give you plus in the pass game, which is always a negative. He's a run defender who's, I just think he's just going to be a role player in the NFL. Cedric Gray, I thought, was a good pick in the fourth round. I think he's somewhat of a limited athlete, but a very high IQ player, very smart. I think he's going to bring leadership to that linebacker position, and I think he could start right away. That might have been their best pick of the draft. Then you look at the rest of the draft, a depth wide receiver that might crack their lineup. I really like James Williams out of Miami. I think if he switches to linebacker, he could be a player. I think this is a great steal pick for them. So not everything was a minus. I really liked watching James Williams on tape, but I do feel he's more of a linebacker. And I don't know if he really wants to make that switch because he did not run an impressive 40 for a safety, but he's 6'4", 231, intriguing prospect. We'll see, though. Maybe that because he went in the seventh round, he'll be willing to switch up in the NFL. Overall, though, I just think the top of their draft was just not very effective and did not address the proper positions effectively enough, or just get them good enough players in those spots. So those are the biggest losers of the 2024 NFL draft. Let me know your take on these teams, and if I am right or if I missed, let me know in the comments section below. Gronk, spike the like button. Don't forget to subscribe, guys. It's Mitch, The Bottom Line View. Thank you for listening, and thank you for watching. Peace.